So how do we reorganise and redeploy at pace? I was really interested to see in the news about Dyson turning their business model around to create ventilators, and also the news about Alibaba and Zongbai creating unmanned centres to distribute essential supplies. I think it's fair to say that prior to COVID, none of these models were in their strategy. So for me, there's something about letting go of business as usual. What that might mean is, and in the case of Dyson and Alibaba and Zongbai, what you had is situations where small groups of people spotted an urgent need and they jumped on it. And what that actually requires from companies who do this to turn their businesses around in response to unprecedented changes in market conditions is that they let go of their normal way of doing things, if you like. They question their procedures. They increase their company's, quote, metabolic rate. So in lots of cases, what you'll find is that rather than making 5 huge decisions in a month, they'll be making 5 huge decisions in a day. And in these situations, when we're responding to something like this, it's very easy, isn't it, to get seduced by, we need to restructure our organisation. So that sort of leads me on to my second point, that I think rather than focusing immediately on restructuring, one of the most important things for companies to start to think about right now is how they can build their agility. Well, what do I mean by that? So engaging their people to start to look at creating and getting accustomed to a new operating model, if you like. So practically what that means is building projects around motivated people so that what they can do is spot problems, solve problems, and escalate solutions across the company really quickly. It also means supporting them to innovate. So rather than, working to really sort of static change plans, to continuously evolve and adapt what they're doing as a response to change as it happens. Now, all that is well, and what's quite interesting is I've got quite a few colleagues who work in the NHS, and one of the regular comments I often hear from them is, through this crisis, we have completely sort of worked differently. We've put aside normal bureaucratic processes. We've collaborated better. We've worked very differently together. How can we make sure that we don't lose that when all of this passes? How can we make sure we don't go back to so-called business as usual? So the really important thing here is, if we're trying to create agility, is to also make sure that our operation supports that. So there's something about, isn't there, what we measure. So rather than measuring outputs and effort, what we might want to measure are outcomes and happiness. The happiness of our customers and the happiness of our people, i.e. their engagement with what we're doing. It also means looking at our processes, looking at our calendars, looking at how often do we have meetings, looking at how many reports we might produce. And what a lot of the companies who've had to respond in the way that I've described have done is they've really sort of stripped out what they thought actually were quite unnecessary bureaucratic barriers to getting things done at the pace that they needed to. It's also worthwhile thinking about agility with a capital A. So by that I mean, look in your organisation for people who are trained in agile methods, because this is where you need them. Bring them into any of these projects that you're running to make sure that you're optimising the opportunities available to you through agile methods. It's important that leaders understand what agile is. It's important that there is an understanding of where it will work really well and where it won't work so well, so that it's deployed in the right way. And if you need to, think about investing in upskilling your workforce in agile methods. So the third thing I wanted to talk about was decision making. I talked about the metabolic rate earlier, and I talked about this no longer working from home, it's just working. There is a big question, isn't there, about how we can enable distributed teams to make decisions really quickly. And the answer, I think, is in good data. So there's something about the data capacity within your organisations, the quality of data that you have available, how you use it and how you get it out to those people in order to make decisions really quickly. So looking at how data literate you are in your workforce. So, a bit like Agile, it's not that you need everybody to be data literate, but what you do need is in every project, in every team, having somebody who really has those skills to be able to crunch down the data, help the team make sense of it, and then react to it in the right way. One of the really good examples of good practice that I saw was organisations who run daily situation rooms. So, they have their leaders gathering at the beginning of every day just for short meetings to look at a deck of slides which has some data on it which talks about what's changed overnight in terms of internally in our business and in our organisation, and also in terms of externally in the wider world around us, in the market, in the economy, in the social context. And what then happens is that those people are then tasked to getting that data out to their teams so that they can make sure that they're making decisions and acting in the context of whatever is emerging in this fast-changing situation. So I hope that's helpful to you. Next week, what I'm going to talk about is how might we lead in unprecedented ambiguity. So in the meantime, take care and thanks for listening.